I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a Wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Federico, Turnbull, Gilmore, Brown, Channel, Bothwell, Babich, Mahar, Mullen, Millen, Sutter, Pedersen, Pavesi, Curry, Zuckley, Uthart, Hunter, Schofield, Reeves, Ramage, Kia, Dunlop, Wickenheiser, Crombie, Benning, Raglan, Ewan, Micheletti, Ramage, Romney, Kozlowski, Evans, Cavallini. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues.
Hello and welcome to Blue Notes, located on the best city on the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we are talking about St. Louis. I am one half of your hosting team of St. Louis Blues coverage on the Hockey Podcast Network. Easy for me to say, easier to think anyway. I'm Tom Franklin, joined as always by my much more competent comrade, Wags. What's going on?
Oh, man, you are definitely setting me up to fail with that comment right there.
Oh, no, I set us all up to fail tonight. I mean, I totally just absolutely bombed that intro there. That was terrible, disgusting behavior.
80 episodes in, that's the first one. I'll take those odds.
Well, you might forgive me for, being a little bit flustered tonight based on number 2 on the board behind me. That is our number 2 most stomach-turning Blues moment in history, and that is just all the moments that Mike Effing Keenan brought to us. So that's our number 2 moment of tonight, and then our honorable mention is another, kind of the, very distress-inducing moment, the 1999-2000 President's Trophy fail. We'll get into that. More bad memories here on Blue Notes as we got to talk about something because there's not a whole lot going on this offseason in the world of hockey. Do want to also let you know that next week we are going to have another golden offering from one Luke Widbin, a.k.a. Teriyaki Fingers, for our number 1 moment, stomach-turning moment in Blues history. We got a preview of that just maybe an hour or two before we went live here, and Wags, it's a masterpiece.
It just keeps getting better and better and better. I mean, first the intro song, then we've had the goalie song, and now we're going to have this. And like you said, we got a sneak peek of it a little bit earlier today, and you guys are in for a complete treat when we unveil that next week. And we could not be more thankful for Luke and what he continues to do for us. And yes, the pandemic has allowed some people to express their creativity because they've been at home for so long. So another good thing that came out of this whole thing is the fact that, Luke's been able to do stuff for us. And it's just been, like you said, absolutely golden every time.
Yeah, I think you asked the question, before we went on very nicely. And that is, what have we done to deserve the talents of Luke Widbin and the talents of the Hawaii Blues fan? Because he's got a special Aloha commentary as well. Again, there is no elevation high enough, to keep, the Hawaii Blues fan from giving us Blues analysis. Today he goes to the top of what is called the Chinaman's Hat in Hawaii. And he didn't just climb, he had to kayak a little ways to get there as well. So he was pretty tired by the end of it. He did it for your entertainment. So give him some love on Twitter. He is at Hawaii Blues Fan. Of course, we are at Blue Notes Pod on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. We're also streaming live on YouTube and Twitch tonight as well. And of course, we also have our audio podcast every Monday, wherever you get your podcast from. And next month will be Monday and Thursday as well on the audio format at the very least. We'll still be live streaming on Sundays for sure. The Thursday episode will just be an audio-only episode because we want to, let you know that we still exist there as well. So there we go. We got to talk, just do a final little tying of the bow on the reverse retros. So I as I noted in the promo video, I was keeping a kind of sort of but not really open mind on these things. Maybe when they come out, maybe I could be convinced to buy one. Well, they came out a day, like the day the audio podcast released on Monday. I can't, Wags, I can't do them. I can't do them. I just, no. I don't want to walk around town looking like a Burger King employee. But that's what I will look like if I wear that thing.
Have you not seen the new Burger King uniforms? They're nowhere close to looking like that.
Okay, maybe it's a reverse retro of a Burger King uniform. How about that?
Hey, it's still a reverse retro.
And plus it would take me back to a time when Burger King was actually good.
That's very true. You used to drive by and smell those Whoppers on the flame grill, and you'd just be getting a hankering for them. And I worked right down the street from one early in my life, and yeah, you stop by there and you can get into a lot of trouble at a Burger King. As far as food is concerned, you can get in a lot of trouble at a Burger King.
Oh yeah. Well, growing up in Arnold, I lived by the Burger King that was on Vogel and the West Outer Road. If you live down there, you know where that one is. And that was like one of the few places that felt like a hangout. After school, you go there. Like I remember for like a while, they had Whoppers for like $1. And when you're a broke ass high school kid working at Emo's, just for a few extra bucks, those Whoppers came in handy for $1. For $1, I'll eat a Whopper. For whatever they charge now, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Burger King to me has gone downhill in the last 10, 20 years. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, their fries are still decent when they're hot, but nothing beats a hot McDonald's fry right out of the fryer, nicely salted. I mean, that's the pinnacle right there. And that's coming from a guy that works at a restaurant that has some pretty good fries as well. But you're talking about, sustaining yourself on cheap food. When I was in college the first time, living in the dorms, we had a McDonald's. I went to Lindenwood, still do. 20 years later, almost
working on a doctorate. No,
but living in the dorms, we were right down the road from a McDonald's. And for me, being the first time I was actually away from home, staying in the dorms, we would be up late at night. We would be going places, and those $1 McChickens were what I lived off of at night. And I still, to this day, I will get McChickens because that will take me back to my college days.
Well, I went to Jefferson College for a year, and there were some late night study sessions that could only be done with the help of Jack in the Box's 2 for 99-cent tacos. That was after midnight. That becomes brain food. Okay, there's something magical about those tacos after midnight. I don't know what it is. No one can ever explain it. It's just the way it is.
Were those study sessions prevalent with alcohol? Because that's generally what makes those tacos taste damn good. Is you got that alcohol flavor in you, and it just mixes with that suspected meat in those tacos, and it works.
I was 19 when I went to Jeffco, so I can neither confirm nor deny legally. By the way, our buddy, the Hawaii Blues fan, checking in saying nothing beats the Lion's Choice.
I had that for lunch today.
I had them. I gotta admit something. I never had Lion's Choice up until very recently. It was like maybe like a month ago, and I thought it was okay.
What?
It was okay. It wasn't bad. I mean, it was just like, but I didn't eat it thinking like, oh my god, where has this been all my life? It was okay. I've never been the big roast beef Arby's guy though. That's just me.
See, like for me, roast beef is king, and I'm not saying that just because I like Lion's Choice, which is the king of roast beef, but yes. Yeah, I mean, roast beef is great, and that sauce or that special seasoning that they use on there. There's certain places that have seasonings that just are the tops, and Lion's Choice is one of them. And if you remember back in the day, Krieger's, their seasoning on their fries, phenomenal.
I've never heard of Krieger's.
Oh, it was only like a 3 or 4 restaurant operation. Okay. We had one out in Maryland Heights. There was one out in Chesterfield as well. It was a family owned kind of thing. But I tell you what, those fries and the seasoning that they had on those, I actually had a former employee that worked for me at Chick-fil-A a few years ago that was actually one of the relatives of the owner, and she actually made up a batch of the seasoning for me to use on fries at home, and it's amazing.
What a lady. What an absolute
she was
lady.
great.
Does anyone else remember Krieger's? Drop a comment, just like the Hawaii Blues fan. We'll pop it on here and we'll talk about it. Anyone remember Krieger's? Also, if you're Lion's Choice, you're looking for sponsorship opportunities, our Gmail is bluenotespod@gmail.com. We would love to talk to you. Anyway, we have completely diverted from our original topic here, and that is the reverse retro jerseys. I guess when you're talking about Salt and Burger King, I guess it can only mean one thing. It's the Blues reverse retro jersey. Here's my final stance on the reverse retro for the Blues. It's not as bad as a lot of other jerseys. I mean, they're reverse retros. I still put it in like the bottom tier. It just to me, it's uninspired. And there's something about that red I just cannot do. If they made it a yellow, like I have a Blues Party Zone jersey from like the 2000s that they used to give the fans that sit in a special section, and it's a yellow jersey with the Blue Note logo, and I think it looks kind of crisp. It looks kind of neat. I mean, that particular jersey doesn't look great now. It's about 20 years old, and I've abused it. So it doesn't look so hot now, but I think if they went with the yellow instead of the red, it might have looked better. And not only that, but yellow has been more of a part of the Blues logo and the color scheme than red from the beginning. Their beginning jersey was blue with yellow kind of trim with it. It was basically the same Winter Classic style. So that's my opinion on it. That's my final thoughts on it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm buying too many of these reverse retro jerseys, honestly. I mean, I'm waiting for that second stimulus to come through, man, because it's, I'm gonna need a bailout. I'm buying 5.
Dang, 5 of them?
5. Now I go through a guy. He's on Reddit.
Don't reveal your secret, though.
No, I'm not gonna. No, I'm not gonna do that. He's got enough on his plate as it is. But he basically sells Adidas at Fanatics prices, basically, and so that's where I'm getting 3 of them. The 3 I'm getting from him are the Pittsburgh, the white word mark, with the letters going down diagonally. It's a classic look. I mean, it harkens back memories of the early 90s Penguins teams, which were my second favorite team for a while, by the way, behind the Blues, because I love Mario and I love Jágr, and I love playing them in NHL 94. You had the Samuelson brothers that could just, kill people, and they were a fun team in NHL 94. So I'm getting them. I am getting the Wild Wing from Anaheim with the duck bursting from the ice in true 90s fashion, because it's the 90s. It's Wild Wing. It's also, if you're a hockey jersey collector, that original version of that jersey is almost impossible to find because it was only out for 1 year. Because it was an abomination. It was terrible. But they did a good job with that. I'm getting that one. And then the third one I'm getting from my guy, I'm trying to think here. It's not the Whalers and Coyotes. I'm getting those from the team stores. I'm suddenly drawing a blank on the third one. See, you have a problem, Wags, when you buy so many jerseys, you can't remember which ones you're buying.
Yeah, that's a problem I wish I could have. And I have to ask. You're getting the Ducks jersey, and you've called it an abomination because it was from the 90s. And that's just the 90s thing. And this is the exact same point I'm going to make, Guy. And yet you think the Blues one is bad. Justify how you can buy an abomination Ducks jersey from the 90s, and yet you don't want to buy a Blues jersey that's from the 90s and you consider just as bad.
It doesn't have red in it.
Oh. Wow.
That's all.
I don't know if that's justification enough for Guy and myself. I can be honest with that.
That's fine. You can believe what you want. That's cool. That's perfectly cool.
I think the Pittsburgh one's an abomination. I loved those Pittsburgh teams because you had Jágr with the mullet, you had Lemieux, you had the Samuelsons. But if you want to talk about uninspired, a white jersey with the word Pittsburgh diagonally across it, wow. That's so cool.
But that's a reverse retro, just as you said. It's the exact reverse of their black jerseys in that style from the early 90s. They just added white to it.
Ooh, a black jersey with Pittsburgh diagonally.
You're
dogging
on the Pittsburgh jersey, and yet you're all, yay, Blues reverse retro. It's so cool.
It's the primary colors of the St. Louis City flag. Red is the primary color, accented by blue and yellow. Okay, if we're talking about honoring the city that they're a part of and the history of the St. Louis Blues, the St. Louis flag is primarily red with yellow and blue accents. Okay, and yes, it is the reverse of the clown jersey, and it is a lazy way of doing the jersey, but there at least is some thought behind it because it still harkens back to the city of St. Louis, and you still have the blue note on there, which if you think about it, the Blues are not named after the color blue. They're named after the style of music that was prominent in the St. Louis area, jazz and blues. So you have the colors of the city flag with the red prominent, and you have the blue note logo, which represents the Blues portion of the team name. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing that it could have done. There could have gone a bunch of different unique ways, but you can't reverse retro a white home jersey or a blue road jersey because it would just be the opposite jersey, something that they've already worn. So like I said, it is a lazy way to go about it. It may not be the best jersey that they've ever come out with, but I see why they went that direction, and I still think it's a decently cool looking jersey. It's a unique jersey. They're going to wear it a couple of times, just like the clown jersey, and then it's going to go away and maybe come back every so often. It's unique. It's not different, but it's different. It's got people talking, so I'm okay with it.
That's fair. I mean, and I'm sure when the Cincinnati Reds come out with their blue reverse retros, I mean, people will be talking about that too.
Honestly, I think the Reds did wear a powder blue uniform at one point in the last, and I think it might have been in association with the Negro Leagues when they did the celebrations.
Oh, that's a good reason.
I think that's part of it, but I think at some point the Reds have worn a blue uniform or had blue in their uniform.
All right, Luke Whitman, our artiste extraordinaire. I get the St. Louis flag argument. I just hate the style they paired it with. Give me the 80s jersey with the Blues above the logo. And he's exactly right. That's a retro they have not done yet. I would have rather have seen that, although I don't know how they could reverse retro that because they had both home and away versions of that. So do you make that red?
See, there's a whole, like I said, there's a whole, with the way the Blues uniforms have been, it's so difficult to reverse engineer one of those to make it unique. This was the only jersey that they could essentially reverse that would not look like a jersey that they've kind of already worn, between like home and away.
Like the Islanders, which basically they just came out with just another version of the jersey they currently wear.
Exactly. And,
which is terrible.
It is now. Now, like the Kings jersey, I really like the Kings jersey. I really like the Canadiens jersey. I think those are really, really cool. And
yeah, the Canadiens are great.
The Arizona jersey, hands down, is probably the winner for me.
You know what? That's one of the jerseys I'm getting. And by the way, I remember the 5th jersey was the Avalanche with the Nordiques logo, which I have a Quebec jersey in that style, the white. It's a Forsberg. And the coloring on that is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. It is laid out beautifully. And I have no doubt that jersey that's probably my number one out of this. I couldn't believe I forgot about them. But number one, I would probably say, is the Avalanche Nordiques for sure. The Coyotes, the desert thing, that's another jersey like the Wild Wing that was hated in its day in the late 90s. It did not look good. And I will say this, the scheme that they had at the time where it was green with the desert logo, it didn't look great. I didn't like the colors on them at all. And apparently a lot of people did. And it's also a hard jersey to find in the hockey jersey market. But the purple that they used for the sky, and then, you still got the cheesy kind of desert motif on the bottom, but the purple really works to the point where I would be totally down if Arizona made that like a permanent color of theirs. That is a good looking purple. I think that looks great. I just, that's where I stand on the Blues reverse retro and reverse retros. If you want to hear more about where I stand on the reverse retros as a whole, I'm going to be on Tip of the Iceberg's podcast tomorrow. The audio version hits tomorrow, wherever you get your podcast from. I think they do a video version on YouTube, but they don't post it until Monday or Tuesday. But myself and both Nicks, Nick Berlansky and Nick Horwat, we kind of break down all the reverse retros that came out. I bitch a little bit more about the Blues because that's what I do well at. But it's a very in-depth conversation, and also they asked about the Blues just as a whole and how they're looking at the season. So for a little bit of a Blues season preview, you can check that podcast out. Tip of the Iceberg. It comes out on Monday. Now, we do have one little bit of Blues news, and it's a pretty small, itty-bitty little bit of news, and that's kind of indicative of where this player stands in the organization. The Blues re-signed defenseman Jake Wallman this week to a 2-year extension. The second year is a one-way deal. The first year is a two-way deal. I'm told, I guess that's because of the time he's had in the organization and his age, maybe they had no choice but to give him a one-way deal, which makes sense. Our friend of the program, Gabriel Foley, notes that the Blues kind of have a logjam at left defense, and he tweeted out, quote, "Here's a list of all the left-handed defensemen that could have an NHL role in the next 2 years. You have Torrey Krug, Vince Dunn, Carl Gunnarsson, Marco Scandella, Scotty Prunovich, Jake Wallman, Tyler Tucker, and Nico Mikkola. 8 guys, including a couple of stars, fighting for basically 3 spots. Yikes." And then just for fun, the right-handed defenseman Colton Parayko, Justin Falk, Robert Portuzzo, Mitch Reinke, and Steven Santini, a much more reasonable list. Weird. But first, let's talk about Wallman. So Wallman's a guy I feel we've been waiting forever to develop, and it just has not happened. It's kind of shit or get off the pot time for Jake Wallman, isn't it?
Yeah, it's exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, that's what you're getting out of him. He's been with the organization for so long. For the longest time, he was the next guy to come out of the minors that you were expecting to be a part of the St. Louis Blues, team. He got a chance to play in a game this year. He had +1 in that game with 1 shot. Didn't really make much of an impact. And the fact that he's got a two-way deal this year and then a one-way deal next year, it almost makes it seem like the Blues are doing everything they can to showcase him enough that maybe they can trade him this year and stick him to a team so he actually gets a chance to play. Not so much stick him with the team, but at least give him a chance to be an NHL player with a team, maybe not with the Blues. Because of that logjam, this two-way deal gives them a chance to showcase him at different points of the season, maybe make a trade and give him that security of knowing, hey, if he's not with the Blues next year, wherever he's going to get a chance to play in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of a similar situation that Jordan Schmaltz was in recent years, where the Blues had to do something with him. They couldn't make him a part of their top 6 or 7, so they traded him on to Toronto in a deal for Andreas Borgman, who has not turned out for the Blues either. But at the very least, they could stash him down in San Antonio. But Gabriel brings up a good point in that there's not a lot of room available. Like we've talked a little bit, this offseason about Nico Mikkola and how I think he's ready for NHL time. It's just, does he have an NHL role for him when you have Torrey Krug, who is locked in long term? He's not going anywhere anytime soon. Vince Dunn, restricted free agent. We haven't seen him re-signed yet. I kind of talked about this with the Iceberg guys. My feeling with Dunn is if he was going to go anywhere, it would have happened by now. I think Vince Dunn is still going to be in this team's plans, in some way, shape, or form. But you got to figure Dunn's going to be part of that defensive group, right, Wags?
See, I don't know. I think at this point, if he was going to re-sign with the Blues, he'd be back because they've lost Alex Pietrangelo, so they know that they have money available. So if that's the case, why have you not re-signed Vince Dunn yet? He hasn't gotten an offer sheet or an offer from anybody else that we know of. So that means that no one else is really kind of doing much. The only thing I can sit there and say is the Blues are probably waiting to the last minute so they get the best deal possible. But we've also talked about what's Vince Dunn's role going forward. Is he a top defensive pairing defenseman? We don't think so. Gabriel has put it out there that he's got one of the highest potentials of offensive defenseman, but he's also been playing third line pairing minutes, going up against third and fourth lines. What's that translate when you're going up against better competition? So if the Blues get the right deal, obviously I think it's gonna work out, and having him on that defensive core is having a better version of Kevin Shattenkirk, I believe. So I'm okay with it if they get the right deal, but I don't think the Blues are really weighing too much on their minds as far as getting done back, because you've got guys like McCullough and you've got a guy like Scott Perunovich that honestly is probably even a better version of Vince Dunn, which means you go from Shattenkirk to Dunn to Perunovich. That's a pretty good increasing progression there. And I think they're looking at it as if Dunn resigns with us for a good price, great. It gives Perunovich some time to develop. If not, we got Perunovich.
Yeah, that's very fair. And one thing that Jeremy Rutherford actually noted to us on Twitter was that he's kind of the belief that Perunovich, they're gonna give him time in the AHL at least to start off with, because you're looking at a shortened season. There's not a need per se for him to be up at this point. I think they want to make sure that he can, adjust to the pro game, because there is, going from college to pros is a little better than going from like juniors to pros, or like Russia to the pros, for instance. But there's still there's still some differences. There's still some, it's a different speed than probably what he's used to. So I think we'll wait on Perunovich for a while. But one thing that JR also confirmed to us is that Scott Perunovich has no issue whatsoever playing on his offhand, which might be handy when you're looking at, Colton Parayko and Justin Falk being locked in for this season and beyond, unless Seattle, decides to take Falk off our hands, and which in that case, God bless you, Seattle. But you're looking at Bertuzzo. I think he's got 1 year left and he's done. Reinke, will he ever put it together? I don't know. Steven Santini, he had promise in the New Jersey organization coming up, but he couldn't crack the Preds, although they have a pretty deep rotation. So you might be looking at a situation where Perunovich plays on the right side, where he's apparently comfortable, which is a big deal, Wags, because we just went through this with Justin Falk, who is clearly not comfortable playing on his left side. And, you being a hockey player yourself, I mean, it just depends on the defenseman, I guess, whether they're comfortable playing on their offhand or not.
It really does, because it's all about positioning. It's about how you're able to move and contort your body, because, if you're going into the boards and you have to figure out a way to switch from your forehand to your backhand or what have you, if you have to think about that and it's not natural, it's going to throw off your entire game, because you're used to going one direction. And if you're flipped onto the other side, that one direction puts you into the boards when really you want to be going to the middle of the ice. So there's a lot of different pieces that go into it. And it's not just defensively as well. It's offensively too, because, having to go, if you're a certain shot and the puck has to cross in front of you to get to your stick, that's going to allow the goaltender to get over and be able to stop your shot. It leads to more intercepted passes, things of that nature. So it's not just defensively that playing on your offhand will mess with you. It's offensively as well. And if you're not accustomed to doing that, and you're not, quick enough, you're not agile enough to do that, yeah, it's going to really wreak havoc with your game. But like you said, Perunovich is comfortable with doing it. He's been put in situations where he's had to do that. And that just makes him a better overall defender and allows you to have that many left-handed defensemen, because now you can slide one over to the right-hand side. Yes, it's not optimal, but at least you have someone that's comfortable doing it and knows how to adjust to that positional change, versus a guy like Falk that's played on the one side his entire time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what Doug Armstrong has up his sleeve. I mean, we didn't expect Torrey Krug to become a St. Louis Blue, and he pulled that out of his sleeve. So, it's kind of hard to predict what a Doug Armstrong led roster is going to look like in a year or two, because he has this ability to pull some surprises on us, that's for sure. So that covers pretty much everything from the Blues this past week. I mean, we finally had something, Blues related to talk about, current Blues related, which was kind of nice. That wasn't, terrible reverse retro jerseys. We got our Aloha commentary coming up with a guy, the YA Blues fan, and our hero not only kayaks across the channel, but climbs yet another tall hill for us, proving there is no lengths he won't go for you and your entertainment. So we're proud to have him on our show, and he's going to have a great Aloha commentary for us after this quick message from the Hockey Podcast Network and another one of our great Hockey Podcast Network shows. After that, it is the Aloha commentary.
Hey hockey fans, I'm Breezy.
And I'm Ray Ray. We host the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network.
We're lifelong hockey fans who talk about the game and the lifestyle. Our guests include professional hockey players.
My rookie party had to wear Speedo, and then we had a checklist of stuff we had to do.
Here we go, Gaber. What do you got to say? And it's kind of like, you know better than that now, boys.
I got dressed for the Bruins. Get a phone call. And he's like, dude, we need you over here by the elevator. You got to get downstairs. You got to get dressed right now.
Started playing the like, dun, 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 and I turned it around and it had the Olympic rings and said, we did it.
NHL team hockey reporters.
I actually took the Stanley Cup to this ice bar when they've got now girls around them, and I've got a fur coat on.
I wonder who he shoot checked over here. And then I looked down at my feet.
Hockey fans.
The entire bar was lined with guys in Kings jerseys. We quickly realized, oh my gosh, this is the dad's trip.
And we bring unique hockey stories to light.
Coming back to England, 24 rings in the entire country. That's where the problem starts with the sport of ice hockey here.
Canadian Blind Hockey Association, those few kids we interviewed, their whole week is built around Sunday at the rink. They're just hockey players.
We don't agree on everything.
Pineapple goes on pizza.
No, it does not.
I think it does. But we do agree that there are many people and places that build the House of Hockey.
New episodes every Tuesday. Come on in to the House of Hockey podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network.
Aloha! And welcome to Aloha Commentary. I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the Blue Note Fan Report. Well, I have something planned today. I'm not sure how it's going to go. It's really windy out here. As you can see, Chinaman hat, and that's actually the real Chinaman's hat, not the one I showed last time. I got confused. Today, we're continuing on with our 10 most gut-wrenching moments in Blues history. I'll show the moments that we've gone over here, and once I get to the island, we'll continue on. Aloha! We're sitting at the bottom of Chinaman's Hat after part one of our 3 or 4 part adventure. With me today is Brett Freeland. Brett was born in St. Louis and was named after Brett Hull. We're going to go to the top of Chinaman's Hat to tell you about the most gut-wrenching moment, number 7, and the most gut-wrenching moments, number 2 for the guys and number 2 for me. So please join us on our journey to the top. Well, aloha. I gotta hold my mic like this. I'm up here at the very top of Chinaman's Hat with Brett Freeland. The number 7 most gut-wrenching moment for both the Blue Notes podcast and the Blue Note fan report, me, is the 1999 President's Cup team. This is a team that was loaded with talent. They scored 114 points, had 51 wins, and it just looked like they were going to go all the way. It was our cup. Do you agree, Brett? Yeah, thanks, Brett. That's a real good comment you made there. We knew that this was going to make it, and then they came up against the Sharks, and the Sharks had a hell of a team, right, Brett? You're right, Brett. They did have a really, really good team, but the Blues should have won, and this was another one of those moments when Blues fans just felt like nothing was going to go right for them. Now we get to the number 2 most gut-wrenching moment, and for me, I'll do mine first. My number 2 most gut-wrenching moment is the picture. The 1970 Stanley Cup Finals, Game 4, Bobby Orr flying across the goal after he scores. Noel Picard tripped him, supposedly, and in celebration, he goes flying across the ice. A picture's taken, and we have to deal with that picture now everywhere. It is the number 1 moment in Stanley Playoff Cup history. It's the number 1 overtime moment. If it's a moment, it's number 1. Nothing beats it. It's in history. Do you agree with me, Brett? Yeah, I thought so. Man, you're just talking a lot today, buddy. So that's my number 2 moment, and I remember it. I see the picture all the time. Now, the guy's number 2 moment was my number 4 moment, and that is the Mike Keenan era. In 1995, or 95, 96, Mike Keenan leaves the Rangers and comes to the Blues as head coach and general manager. Everybody in Bluesland was absolutely excited. We thought Iron Mike was going to get us that ring. Don't you agree, Brett? Yeah. He's right. He thought Iron Mike was going to get us it. I thought we were going to get it, but it didn't happen. I reached out to someone I know in the Blues organization who was there at that time, and they told me 2 things about Iron Mike. 1, he was a great coach. He was a fair GM, but as a GM and coach, he was an abomination. And he also told me a story. He was with Iron Mike, or he was with Dan Kelly in Philadelphia. They go down in the Forum to meet Iron Mike to get the goalie, the starting goalie. He asked Iron Mike who the starting goalie is going to be, and Iron Mike says, I haven't made up my mind yet. In true Dan Kelly fashion, Dan Kelly says, F you, Keaton. I know who's the starting pitcher for Game 4 of the World Series. You damn well know who the starting goalie is for Game 4 of the NHL season. And then walked away. My friend said, I just looked at Mike and said, I guess I'm not getting my starting goalie, and walked away. Mike was just not good with people, and that's how he was. Well, guys, I got one more part of this adventure to share with you, and I'll see you at the bottom. Aloha. Aloha. Well, we've done it. We've reached the end of our adventure. And just like the Blues fans in 1970, 1999, and the Mike Keenan era, we are completely exhausted. So, this is Guy and Brett saying aloha and mahalo. Tom and Wags, can't wait to hear what you've got to say about all this. Aloha, mahalo, and we'll see you on the next Aloha Commentary and the Blue Note Fan Report. Aloha.
Wow.
Again.
That, you know, I commented to you, Wags, you know, while that was playing, that I was exhausted, you know, halfway up the hill, you know, when they were climbing, because, like, you know, this isn't just like, you know, take a little hike up the hill on a, you know, pre-paved, you know, path. This was hands in the dirt, climbing up the hill, and this after you had to kayak across the channel with the waves coming against you, and just bravo, Hawaii Blues fan. There are no lengths you will not go for this show. So seriously, they did. That's the thing that blows my mind, Wags. He did all that, and he brought, 2 assistants with him, including Brett. And of course, they had and I saw like in one of the shots there was a black case, which I guess had audio equipment in it, and I guess the camera and stuff, like, or a camera. And I'm just like, they're doing all this for a hockey podcast that 2 assholes from St. Louis stream on the internet at 6:30 p.m. on a Sunday. Unbelievable, guys. Thank you from the bottom of our heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about all we can really say.
A couple things I want to point out from the video. Number one is nice save and a beauty by Guy as the hat was blowing off of his head. Quick scramble, like Grant Fuhr like quickness to keep the hat from blowing all the way over to another island. Way to go, Wags. Or not Wags. I mean, way to go, Guy. For having the cat-like reflexes there. And then the second thing, and I'm going to echo what Luke Woodbin has to say. Poor Brett. Poor Brett could not get a word in edgewise. He looks so happy to be there, though.
He did. I thought, like Guy said, I thought he talked too much. I mean, he just was spewing stuff left and right, like you could not believe. No, but I think that made the whole bit too. Is that it? I don't know if it was preconceived or what, but I think it worked phenomenally. It was hilarious, and hopefully Brett gets a chance to actually voice his opinion on our show or on the Blue Note Fan Report at some point.
Absolutely. Follow us, Brett. I'm sure you've got a golden voice. We would love to hear it someday. Absolutely. And then, Guy, you're probably watching as we speak. How long did that take? Wags was actually asking that off air. It's just like, the kayak across that channel. I mean, there was a lot more of that I ended up, kind of clipping out. And then climbing up the hill. I mean, just how long did that take? Drop a comment, Guy. We'll talk about it here for sure. But all of that leads us to our number 2 most stomach turning moment in Blues history, and that is Mike Effing Keenan. And to this isn't just one moment here. There's a whole history that we have to talk about here with one Iron Mike Keenan. And
before we go further, though, should we label this viewer discretion advised? Is this TV mature, or are we going to go with the family fun edition?
As of this point, we are going to try to keep this family friendly. It may be difficult at times because it's Mike Keenan, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best. We'll do our. You know what? I feel it feels with the Hawaii Blues fan. We need to. He wants to make sure that as many people see his climb up Chinaman's hat, as possible. And if I'm dropping F-bombs, left and right here, kids can't see it. So, they can't be inspired by Guy Bensing's selfless act of cardio,
and they cannot properly hate Mike Keenan unless they know the story of Mike Keenan.
Right. Don't ever say the Hockey Podcast Network doesn't have a health and wellness plan, because you just saw it right there. We have encouraged a grown-ass man to climb up a tall hill for your entertainment and, get a good workout at the same time. So, there we go. All right. So this kind of almost picks up where we left off from last week in terms of timeline, because it's 1994. And this is, after the last Scott Stevens flirtation that didn't happen. And now we're that whole saga, which I'm getting PTSD just thinking about it, just of all the details about it. That's all kind of subsided. It's 1994. Mike Keenan has finally ended the Stanley Cup drought for the New York Rangers. Magical run that year, featuring iconic moments, like Mato when he scored the goal to help the Rangers advance. And then of course we get that shot of Mark Messier just like laughing maniacally like he's the Joker as he finally got to step out of the shadows of the Gretzky-led Oiler teams and claim his own cup, and as the star and leader of his own team. So a week after the Cup win, though, that's when kind of the honeymoon ends for that, is a week, because Mike Keenan has a beef with GM Neil Smith, and all of a sudden, and I remember seeing reports on local TV, like as this was happening when I was 9 years old, that the Blues were hiring the coach of the 1994 Stanley Cup winners, Mike Keenan, right after they win the Cup. Now, do you remember where you were when you heard that Keenan was being hired by the Blues?
I actually think I was in my grandparents' house when this happened. And yeah, I remember vaguely hearing about it, but being 9 years old, I didn't understand the gravity of the situation, because I'm like, okay, cool. We got a new coach. That's awesome. Maybe we'll win a Stanley Cup. That'd be really, really cool. But that's about all I got out of it. But I do remember I was at my grandparents' house, and one of those big box TVs, and I think there were actually dials still on the TV as well. That doesn't beat me right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember, and it had one of those really funky old 90s graphics. I remember that pretty well. But yeah, that's about really all I remember about the Mike Keenan hiring.
Well, I remember seeing the report. I think it was like on Channel 4, on the like 10 p.m. news of Keenan coming to St. Louis, and it blew my mind because, hey, this guy won a Stanley Cup. This guy must be good. And we were just coming off of the tenure of Bob Berry, who lasted for about 2 years. And I remember I didn't like Bob Berry as a coach. He was a very it felt like a letdown, I think, after we had, Brian Sutter and then Jacques Martin, really good coaches. And then he kind of knocked the team down a peg a little bit. But Keenan comes in. But of course, in a move that, first of all, before we get to that, on the flip side of this, the Rangers were losing the coach that led them to the promised land. And in a nastier split than what would happen 24 years later when Barry Trotz left the Caps. That was amicable by comparison. This was pretty nasty. Could you imagine Craig Berube leaving St. Louis a week after the Blues won the Cup? I mean, it would break your heart, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. And, the Rangers were going sort of through the same sort of situation the Blues were in at that time, is they were a team that had not won a championship in a very, 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 very long time, if at all. And you got a guy that just led you to the promised land with a guy in Messier who was trying to exercise some demons. And, it mirrored the Blues run in 2019 pretty closely. And to have somebody that helped take you to that and then just decide, okay, I'm out. And Mike Keenan was only there for a year too. Craig Berube wasn't even there for a full year.
Yeah,
and led this team to a championship. So the fact that Keenan was only there a year too, there's a lot of similarities there, and I just cannot see, Craig Berube leaving a week after winning the Stanley Cup.
It's unfathomable.
Yeah,
just absolutely unfathomable to think about. By the way, speaking of unfathomable, guy checking in, it took about 5 hours from start to finish for all that just to record a bit for us two assholes. There we go. Now we're not family friendly. I lost, so
We've
sorry.
Broken the steel.
The children of the world will never know the sacrifice that guy took to climb that hill for us. Seriously. And then also, Brett's been a part of his show before, and we're working on a show together now. Okay, so we got a new Blues podcast coming up. We like to hear that. The more the better. Competition is always good, and I kind of consider us a bit of a family. Between us, we get along well with a lot of the other podcasters. Two Guys, One Cup. We, like to banter back and forth on Twitter a little bit. Even the Locked On guys, like Joey Palazzolo and Welsh and Hyman. We're friendly. There's no real competition. We're all in this together. Back to the Keenan era, which was definitely had some competitive moments, both in the locker room and on the ice. The Blues hire Keenan, but in a move that will evoke traumatic memories of last week's episode, the Blues were caught tampering.
What?
Say it ain't so. Not the Blues. Keenan, they tampered with Keenan while he was still under contract with the Rangers. So, but here's the difference between Mike Keenan and Scott Stevens. It didn't take 5 years for the NHL to determine that the Blues were tampering. It took them 9 days. 9 days. Why couldn't they get the guy who determined that on the Scott Stevens case? Why? Anyway, the Blues were hit. I don't know. So the Blues were hit with a $250,000 fine. Keenan had to be delayed until September 24th from starting with the Blues. There was kind of like a 60-day suspension that the NHL kind of laid down on him. And the league basically forced the Blues to trade Peter Nedved to the Rangers for Doug Lidster and Esa Tikkanen, which this wasn't a restricted free agent deal. This was the NHL telling the Blues and the Rangers, okay, this is the compensation. You get the young, promising forward for 2 old fossils. That's the deal. That's strange. It's a very strange thing. But as we have learned the past couple weeks, Wags, the NHL is very strange when it came to restricted free agents and compensation. They just were. And thankfully, these type of dealings, Wags, made the type of restricted free agency rules we have now, which are a lot more well-defined.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. But there's also another, and if you want to dive down a conspiracy hole, maybe the league had something out for the Blues, because it seemed like the Blues were the ones that were getting punished very, very heavily in a lot of these instances. And I don't recall any other stories of teams being hit this hard in this many consecutive years. Granted, once again, we had Ron Caron, so I guess it was inevitable, but maybe the league had something, some sort of reasoning for the Blues getting punished like this. And I'd be very interested if any of the other podcasters on the network have any of these stories like this, to reach out. But I don't think any other team had to go through something like this.
I really think it's just because the Blues poked the beehive too much. That's really what it is. They tried too much of this, basically, and they pissed off enough people into where they kind of put the clamps down on them. Now, one fun fact is that the New York Times, I read an article today, it wasn't just the Blues that were tampering with the Rangers. It was the Detroit Red Wings were also tampering with Mike Keenan, trying to hire Mike Keenan as their coach at the same time the Blues were. Now, of course, the Blues ended up getting Keenan. The Red Wings were also fined $25,000 for their attempt to tamper with Mike Keenan. And because Detroit did not get Mike Keenan, they ended up settling for Scotty Bowman.
Oh.
It all comes full circle. Now, here's another what if for you. What if the Red Wings were able to lure Keenan and not the Blues? Do you think they go on that magical late 90s run with Mike Keenan as the coach? Knowing the way Keenan was and knowing like how delicate Sergei Fedorov was and how temperamental some of those stars could be, I don't think it would have happened, Wags.
I think they would have won at least one cup. I think they probably would have had, just like he's had short-term success in most of the places he's been at, because if you look at his career, he had 4 years of success in Philadelphia. He had multiple years of success in Chicago. So it's not like he was a coach that was a one-hit wonder. He had success. And even after he left the Blues, in Vancouver, he was okay. He had a great year in Boston. And then his last 2 seasons in Calgary even were really, really good. So I think he would have been able to coax that team maybe to a Stanley Cup victory in a year or two that he was there. But yeah, I would not have had that long-term sustained success of Scotty Bowman. And you're talking about what if. So let's say the Red Wings get Mike Keenan. Who's to say that Scotty Bowman doesn't come to St. Louis and changes the course of history once again for the Blues?
You never know. That would have been a heck of a story, though, for Bowman to come back after leaving in 1970 and then leading the Blues to glory, like as if he was picking up where he left off. God, that's that's.
We can have a whole nother show on what ifs.
We need to talk to the writers of the TV show Flash and do some alternate universe, kind of storylines here, because I'm really curious how that would have turned out.
We could do that. We could. We could create an alternate dimension Blue Notes pod and do like Marvel 616. do these what ifs and just pretend like that's the world we're living in. We could totally do that.
Is hockey fan fiction a thing?
It can be.
Let's start it.
I think we can.
Here we go.
Niche number 4.
Remember this, November 22nd, 2020, the year that hockey fan fiction became a thing. No,
Mark it down.
Mark it down. All right. And of course, we have to think fan fiction here because we have to talk about Mike Keenan, which is the reality. And the reality was not good. So Keenan's first season is the lockout shortened year. It's 48 games. He brings the Blues to a 28-18-5 record. Good for second in the division, 9 points behind Detroit. Encouraging to start off. The playoffs is where things start to get weird with Keenan. The Blues got bounced in the first round, 4-3 by the Vancouver Canucks. Cujo did not have a great game 7, and Keenan kind of turned him into a scapegoat after that. And now let's go back to last week. Once again, for more complicated and maddening Blues mid-90s transactions, because we got one here for you. The Blues that offseason, which signed Shane Corson from the Edmonton Oilers. He was a restricted free agent. So as we have learned, the Oilers were due compensation, and they were due 2 first-rounders. So the Blues were able to give them their 96 and 97 first-round picks, which, by the way, would be like 7 straight years the Blues would not have a first-round pick, which seems insanity to me, but that's the Blues for you in the mid-90s. Well, Cujo was in Keenan's doghouse, and he was a restricted free agent, and Keenan really was not keen on losing those first-rounders. I wonder why. Oh, yeah, because they typically become good players. So Keenan decides to get rid of his quote-unquote problem in Curtis Joseph and prospect Mike Greer, who had a nice and long career in the NHL for a few teams, in exchange for those 2 first-rounders. So they had to trade for their own first-rounders back in order to get Shane Corson. So it was effectively Cujo and Mike Greer for Shane Corson. Kind of gives you a bit of a different perspective on Shane Corson. This deal, this whole deal of Cujo, though, and again, this is 9-10-year-old me here. The Blues just traded Curtis Joseph. I couldn't believe it at the time because I thought Curtis Joseph was the franchise. He was the guy. He had the cool nickname in Cujo. He always had really cool goalie mask on. And Wags, I don't know about you, but this trade really was a gut punch for me.
It was for me as well. Actually, when a girl I went to school with, she actually knew the guy that painted Cujo's masks. And that was like you said, he had some just incredibly cool masks and equipment, and he was the goalie of the future for the Blues. And when they made that move, you were just like, what are we doing? What is happening here? Because there was no other goalie in the system that you were sitting there going, okay, well, at least we got somebody that can come up. The Blues traded Jake Allen this year. Well, Binnington won the Stanley Cup, so you had a replacement, essentially, viable replacement. When they traded Cujo, it was like, you brought in a Stanley Cup winning coach. We've got a team that can compete and win a Stanley Cup. And you trade away your franchise goaltender in his prime with no discernible replacement option at the time. Like, what is going on? And it should have been the key in the queue for us to go, Keenan's got to go. But we were all blinded by his cup win and thought, okay, he knows what he's doing. Something's going to happen.
It was one of the first chinks in his armor. The other chink actually happened before then, and that was actually trading known adulterer and wife stealer Brendan Shanahan, fresh off of stealing Craig Janney's wife. It turns out that causes a little bit of a locker room distraction. So they traded Shanahan for Chris Pronger. And when I say they, I mean Keenan. It was a deal that hurt me at the time. That hurt me worse than Cujo because I was a big Brendan Shanahan fan when I was a kid. He always would host these like charity softball games, during the summer with the Blues players against the media. They would always play at St. Louis University. And, afterwards, I got to meet him and like Brett Hall after the games. And they were super nice, super friendly people. And, I was very sad when Shanahan left. But Shanahan, of course, as I mentioned, was becoming a locker room issue with the Janney's wife deal. And then that Pronger kid turned out pretty well. a good deal in the end. And, and also, by the way, this kind of puts, a period on our last episode in that the Blues finally have their Scott Stevens level franchise defenseman. It just took, a few extra moves to get there, and all is well that ends well, right?
Yeah, it really does, because it eventually led to Mr. Robot leading to Mr. Bennington and a Stanley Cup win. So you got some great years with Chris Pronger, and it ended up not leading to a Stanley Cup with him, but eventually leading to a Stanley Cup. So yeah, I would say all is well that ends well.
Yeah, it's just we have to go through some pain to get to that point, though. And also worth noting that once Corson was signed, Keenan named Shane Corson the captain right away, and he just stripped Brett Hull the captaincy. Just whoop, done. You're no longer captain, Mr. Franchise right-winging scoring Golden Brett. No more captaincy for you. And this started a nasty rift between Brett Hull and Mike Keenan. I remember back then Brett Hull was not shy, or he didn't really hide his distaste for Keenan very well, and it was all over the media. And really, how could you not take Brett Hull's side at the time? I mean, the guy is, Kiel Center at the time, as it was known at the time, was the place that Brett Hull built, and he built it in a lot of ways. When his arrival really cemented the Blues into the community and really has led to what we know today. I mean, he was the catalyst for that, him and his marketability and his scoring touch. And he's named captain. He is considered the leader for so many years. And in walks this guy from Edmonton, and now he's the captain. After in walks this guy from New York to become the coach a year prior. You can't blame Hall for being mad.
No, not at all. I mean, you talk about hockey fan fiction. I still have the McDonald's comic books with the Golden Brett, the futuristic ones. So, he was the face of this team. And, you can sit there and say maybe he wasn't captain material. Maybe he wasn't the ultimate leader in the locker room that a guy maybe like Corson could be. But the way it went down just pretty much cemented the fact that if Keenan was going to be here, Brett Hull probably wasn't. And I don't know if I could have taken that knowing at the time that it was either Keenan or Hull. Looking back, yeah, it sucks. But
yeah,
it started the process.
If you're watching the video stream, by the way, I have my comics right here. Right there on the bookshelf where my finger is, right around there. There we go. There's my Vanna White impression right there. and by the way, I'm doing like multiple things with my fingers here. So this is the cup right here. Whatever. I'm done. No more Vanna.
It's just like the mask fiasco.
I can't do it. I can't do it. I just cannot do it. Guy climbs the hill for me. We have Luke Whitbin that goes out and makes a beautiful music video for us. And I'm doing everything with my hands. And I don't know what I'm doing with them. Quality broadcasting.
Good thing that the people that listen to the podcast can't see us, because it would probably ruin the effect.
And those same people are probably like, maybe I should check out their video podcast sometime. Oh, wait, no, never mind. He just, Tom just fucked it up for us. So, no, never mind. I don't want to see that shit. God, come on. All right. So, speaking of not wanting to see that shit, Mike Keenan, notable prick, though he loved to play head games with the players. On the most recent, on a recent Spit and Chicklets, Chris Pronger talked about how Brett Hull once told him to stand up to Mike Keenan after Iron Mike kind of made Pronger's first few months of living hell. Really good episode. If you haven't listened to the Chris Pronger episode of Spit and Chicklets, check it out. It's very enlightening about what life in the Blues locker room was like in those early goings, because he took a lot of shit from Keenan to start off with. Then there's the Dale Howardchuk story that still just grates on my nerves, and actually kind of started really the separation of Brett Hull and St. Louis, just this slow glacial separation. Brett Hull himself told it best, quote, Dale Howardchuk's grandmother was dying. He's from just outside Buffalo, and we were going to play the Sabres, and his grandmother was coming to watch him play for the last time. And Mike Keenan sat him out on purpose. That's the lowest thing I've ever seen in my life. End quote. I've talked about that moment a few times in this podcast, and I talk about it for one reason, and that is it was an absolutely despicable move. You just don't do that if you're a head coach. You just don't do that.
No, I don't even know what to say because that's just ridiculous. And how it's not like the decision was made prior to the game, like a day or so in advance. It wasn't like, oh, it's a maintenance day, don't bring her out or anything like that. Like he made that decision like hours before puck drop. So everything was already put in motion to have his grandmother there and everything. And it's not like the team could have rallied around him and said, Coach, like Rudy, he's in, I'm out. He's in, I'm out. He's in, I'm out. I could imagine that have been the case if Keenan had made that decision a day or two before, where the entire team goes in and lays down their jersey for Dale Howardchuk to go play in that game. But he made it so late that couldn't happen. And it's just like you said, it's an absolute dick move. And I just hearing that story again just gets me all riled up.
Yeah. How does it not? It's a terrible story. And of course, in the long run, this is where Mike Keenan plants the seeds that would lead to Hull leaving for Dallas in 1997. Yes, by then, Coach Q was the coach the year that Hull went into free agency, but Hull had some issues with Coach Q as well. And I feel that he was just embittered at that point with St. Louis after going through the Mike Keenan hell. And by the time that Quenneville came in, it was just irreparable. He needed a change of scenery. And sadly, I've come to grips with that fact. Even though when Brett Hull left St. Louis, I was mortified because Hull was my hero. He was my childhood hero. He was my icon. He was a guy that I tried to, I drew inspiration from because I was kind of a shy, introverted kid growing up. And here's Brett Hull, this very brash and, outspoken guy. And, he was inspiring to me. And to see him walk out of town, it broke my heart. But again, looking back on it, I don't blame Hull for leaving St. Louis. It's just because by that point, he had been messed around with to the point where enough was enough.
Yeah, I mean, I still wear number 16 because of Brett Hull. He is my guy. It's one of those things that I grew up watching him play. He was the savior of the Blues, and now he's gone. So, yeah, it definitely hurt a little bit to the core that actually happened. But like you said, you could see it coming in the long run. It was going to be the case that Brett Hull was not going to be a Blue. It stung, but looking back, you knew it was going to happen. It just, for me, the worst part is the fact that he went and won a Stanley Cup with Dallas the next year. And then he won a Stanley Cup in Detroit. That hurt. I think that hurt more than him winning in Dallas, honestly. That one hurt the worst.
It hurt for me. I had nothing against Dallas at the time. I've really never had anything against Dallas. Detroit, on the other hand, I've had therapy issues over that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not actually. I've gone to therapy over.
We probably should have.
But we probably should have. Honestly, it would have probably helped. At least, especially for next week's, moment, which we'll talk about, next week when we have to. We're not going to talk about it now. But you know what I'm talking about, Wags, and I'm just.
Yeah, I got to take a week to prepare. It's a good thing it's Thanksgiving week.
Yes, it is. We'll be full of L tryptophan from Turkey. So maybe we won't be that feisty, but it'll be interesting.
No, we'll just be crying the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's going to be the emotional episode next week. That is for sure. Of course, the other thing about Keenan's tenure that kind of marred his time here was his reliance on old geezers. Charlie Huddy, Glenn Anderson, Esa Tikkanen, Craig McTavish, Stefan Matteau, Dale Howardchuk, Basil McRae, Guy Carbonneau, Peter Stastny, not Paul, Peter, Greg Gilbert, Doug Lister, all 30 and older, and all except Carbonneau maybe that would be considered in their twilight of their careers. His reliance on old guys, especially like former Edmonton Oilers, he had a weird thing about old Edmonton Oilers. It wasn't even so much former Rangers, like he made sure to bring in Tikkanen and Matteau, but Oilers. He wanted to recreate the Oilers team. And also this guy named Wayne Gretzky too. We'll talk about him in just a little bit as well. But it wasn't a good strategy, and it hurt the Blues a little bit after he left, and that it took them a year or two to kind of recover from the Mike Keenan era and where he put the Blues at that point. But most importantly, the issues that Keenan was leading to bad play on the ice. He coached the team to a losing record the following year, his first full season that wasn't lockout shortened. 32, 34, and 16, and a fourth place finish in the Central. So a losing record, and yet still good for fifth in the West, and a date with Toronto in the first round. And oh yeah, they acquired Wayne Gretzky at the deadline because they needed a boost, and you have the great one available, so you go out and get the great one. That's what you should do. So no big deal, right? Well, so we all know, for anyone else around that time period knows what happened in that playoffs. Nick Kyprios destroys Grant Fuhr's knee on semi-purpose. The fall was intentional. The intent to injure wasn't. But the real story here, Gretzky was not having the playoffs that Keenan expected out of him, or at least he felt that he should be performing. And he was still a point-per-game guy. Ended up with 16 points in 13 games, including 14 assists. But it's rumored that Mike Keenan, of course, being the lover of head games that he is, pulls a contract offer for Wayne Gretzky during the playoffs. Gretzky was about to become a free agent. He wanted to stay in St. Louis. He's been quoted by the Post-Dispatch as saying so. And of course, it's also worth noting his wife, Janet, is from St. Louis. So this is where he wanted to retire. This is where he wanted to play his final years. The great one. This is where he wants to be. And Keenan decides to pull a contract offer for him to come back. It was an attempt to motivate him, but Wayne took it personally and infuriated him so much that he chose a lesser offer from the New York Rangers instead of a higher offer from the St. Louis Blues in the offseason. And that, in my opinion, was the deciding factor in making Mike Keenan our number 2 most stomach-turning moment in Blues history. We could have rated, you can make the argument that some of our other moments may have been ranked higher or lower. To me, letting Gretzky walk because you're an asshole, that is why you are ranked as highly as you are on our stomach-turning moments in Blues history. Because losing Gretzky broke my heart almost as bad as anything else in Blues history. What about you?
Yeah, because yes, he was nearing the end of his career. It wasn't like he was the Edmonton or the Kings version of Wayne Gretzky, but he was still playing at a high clip for his age. And having him paired with Brett Hall, having an Al McInnes on this team, having a young Chris Pronger, having at the time Grant Fuhr. I mean, this could have been the team that won it all. It really could have been. And not only that, but Gretzky is a guy that attracts names. He attracts players because they want to play with Wayne Gretzky. So instead of having these old 30-plus-year-old guys coming into play, maybe you have a young superstar that's like, look, I'll take a pay cut if I get to play with Gretzky and have a chance at winning a Stanley Cup. Who knows what could have happened? And basically, the Blues chose Mike Keenan over Wayne Gretzky. And for the longest time, they could not live that down.
No, and it hurt a lot. I mean, this year, I had made maybe a week or two after the playoffs ended. It was right around the time of my birthday when the playoffs got done. So, I wanted a Gretzky jersey, and we ended up getting a blank and then having someone in town locally whoever did the stitching for the Blues. It wasn't Levy at the time, I don't think. It may have been, but I remember going to a place in South County for this, and they had Gretzky 99 stitched, and it's, team authentic. And about 2 or 3 weeks after I get this jersey made, Gretzky signs in New York. And it crushed me. And not only that, but I actually outgrew that jersey like within about a month after that. So, I didn't have a chance to really wear it that much. So that's why it's on my wall right now instead of my closet. So that's Gretzky. And you'll understand, like I said, you'll understand next week why this moment was not the number 1 most stomach-turning moment in our list. You'll understand when we tell you what moment that is. And we got some preparing to do this week emotionally for that.
Sacrificing to the hockey gods.
Yeah, literally. So the next season, the Blues are off to a 15-17-1 start. And that, coupled with losing Gretzky, losing Curtis Joseph, starting the process to lose Hull in a nasty public feud. You've already alienated him pretty much to the point where he's of no return. Signing all these old geezers, getting rid of good young talent to do so, and effectively losing the locker room. All of that meant that on December 19th, 1996, the St. Louis Blues had a Christmas gift for Mike Keenan. Merry effing Christmas, Mike Keenan. You're fired. Right, a week before Christmas. That's not a good time to be fired in any profession. I feel that getting fired right before Christmas is getting fired with prejudice.
Yes. Yeah, and how this is not a local holiday is still beyond me.
It should be. December 19th should be, Mike Keenan Liberation Day in St. Louis. I mean, we should celebrate that like the French celebrate Bastille Day. That's
Blue Note holiday. Blue Note holiday.
There we go. By the way, also our buddy Luke Whitman was a Blues fan at the time. My grandma got me a jersey T-shirt of Gretzky. I left it on the floor, and my cat. Oh no, that should have been a warning. Oh no, it's the curse of Whitman's cat. That's why we lost Gretzky. Oh no, oh god, the Cubs had the curse of the Billy Goat. The Boston had the curse of the Bambino, and you've got the curse of the cat. That's why we don't have Gretzky, Luke. Wow,
it all comes out.
What a terrible cat. What a terrible cat. Oh man. So back on track. The Blues would sign Colorado Avalanche assistant coach Joel Quenneville, and some good times would soon follow. It's also kind of appropriate. I want one final note on Keenan here. It's also kind of appropriate that these reverse retros come out now, because the original version of the retro jerseys, like you just saw with the Gretzky, they basically were the jersey of the Mike Keenan era. They started when he was hired. It took him about a half a season or a season to get rid of them and get the jerseys that they have today. So when people kind of look at these clown jerseys with ire, I think that's got a lot to do with it, because it evokes really bad memories of a really awful human being in Mike Keenan. But as you pointed out, though, Mike Keenan did save us from one abomination.
Yes, those very, very terrible potential third Blues jerseys with the trumpets and the notes, and I don't even know, there was some sort of animal on there, I think. It was horrific, disgusting, terrible, and that's the literally one good thing Mike Keenan did for the St. Louis Blues, is not having that team wear that abomination of a jersey.
Let me see if I can pull it up here real quick, just to show you what we're talking about here, because this thing is just terrible. See if I can...
Oh, it was a cat.
Yes.
Oh, it was a cat. Is that Luke's cat? Is that Luke Whitman's cat?
I think that is actually Luke Whitman's cat was Cool Cat. That's what that thing is on the bottom right. I can't find a bigger image of this, unfortunately.
Good though. Good. We don't need to see it.
Yeah, but yeah, you can see what we're talking about with this jersey. It's just an absolute horrendous. Maybe that should have been the reverse retro.
Oh, you want to talk about ire?
I would have bought that before the red reverse retro. But I still wouldn't have bought it. I still would not have bought it.
I would have bought it, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. As Luke points out, you can see that jersey from space. It's that bad. It is that bad. All right. So we have purged ourselves of the Mike Keenan era for now. Thank God. Now to our honorable mention, which is just more pain, because this is what we do. It is the 1999-2000 President's Trophy season. And this year, I mean, it starts off great. I mean, they have they had in the regular season the 51, 19, 11 and 1 record, 59 wins in a season. That's pretty damn good. Or 51 rather. They had 114 points. They won the West by 6 points over Detroit, and I think they had 9 points above your nearest Eastern Conference team. So the Blues had the best record in all of hockey, and they won their first and so far only President's Trophy. This was also the year Chris Pronger won the Hart Trophy, which almost never happens as a defenseman. He also won the Norris that year as well. Pavel Demitra arguably has his best year as a Blue with 75 points, 28 goals, 47 assists in 71 games. Pierre Turgeon is also had a full year as a Blue. Only played 52 games. He was a little injury prone. But 26 goals, 40 assists for 66 points, above a point per game pace for him. Chris Pronger, a plus 52, 79 games played, 62 points. Mikael Handzus even was one of the team's best scorers that year. He had 25 goals, 28 assists for 53 points, and he was a plus 19. Al McGinnis had 11 goals and 28 assists. Just good numbers all around. This was also when the Blues still had like Lubos Bartechko. Mike Eastwood was a face-off extraordinaire guy. Jochen Hecht, that's a nice late 90s name for you, Jochen Hecht. And, of course, Craig Conroy, who came over in the Pierre Turgeon deal. Those were some of the leading players on the team. The Blues got great goaltending that year as well. This was the good Roman Turek year. He had 42 wins. Just 15 losses. He had a 195 goals against average and a 912 save percentage. His backup was Jamie McLennan. He also played well in 19 games, had a 196 goals against average and a 903 save percentage. So you have good scoring, you have a deep roster, you have great goaltending, you have a great coach in Joel Quenneville. You have a Hart Trophy winning defenseman, which is, about as rare as Haley's Comet. So all these great things are happening, and surely they made a killer playoff run, right? Right? Wax?
Do you want me to relive this? Please don't.
No, we got to. The Blues lost in 7 games in the opening round to the last seeded San Jose Sharks.
But positive. They were
Where?
They were down 3-1 in the series in 7 games.
They still lost.
I know. I was trying to be nice.
You tried. I admire your effort, but here's what happened basically. So the Blues ended up winning game 1 5-3, and then the wheels start falling off. They lost 4-2, 2-1, 3-2. Competitive, they were playing down to San Jose. It wasn't like San Jose was playing up to the Blues, although Steve Shields had a really good series for the Sharks. As you mentioned, they won 5-3 and 6-2 in games 5 and 6, and hope was there, and they were coming home, and they lost 3-1. And Roman Turek started a bunch of beach ball memes before, beach ball memes were even a thing, because he was letting in softy after softy. And this was actually the beginning of the end of Roman Turek, because he never recovered from this. He got the yips, and that was pretty much it. But at least the Sharks made a deep run. Well, wait, no, they didn't. They lost to the eventual champion Dallas Stars next round, 4-1. So we can't even have that pyrrhic victory. But first round exits, they're actually more common than fans think they are when it comes to President's Trophy teams. It actually has happened 7 times. Most recently with the Tampa Bay Lightning, getting bounced by Columbus. A first round bump has happened 5 times since the Blues won their trophy, but just once before. But the big story here was that when the Blues got into the playoffs, the fans, we were expecting, this was the year the Blues were going to win a cup. They didn't expect the fizzle, but they got one. Steve Shields, a goalie, as I said, a goalie who most folks don't remember. He was a real difference maker for the Sharks in Game 7. Turek, as I mentioned, laid a massive egg. Turek was quoted as saying, quote, "I feel so bad. You cannot win in the playoffs if you have goaltending like I played these games. I cannot explain it," end quote. And he never could find an explanation for it. He never got better, and he was gone to Calgary, I think, in 2 years, after that. So it was just, my memories of this team, it just really felt like the bottom fell out. They looked very tired. They did not look like themselves in the regular season. I don't know if it was just the expectation that wore them down or the constant high standard they play in the regular season. I've never really been able to figure out exactly why the Blues hit the wall the way they did. Do you have any theories, Wags?
The only one that might hold some weight is the fact that this is the year that the Blues were projected to meet up with Brett Hull and the Dallas Stars. It was 99-2000. The Stars would be the eventual champions. Everybody in St. Louis was sitting there going, okay, we're gonna have to face Brett Hull in order to make the Stanley Cup this year. And I think people, and I think maybe even some of the Blues, were projecting further in their heads that was the point that they needed to get to, and they just overlooked San Jose. And this is before competitive balance. You talk about 5 bounces by top teams since this happened. Well, the competitive balance has shifted immensely, where the 1 and 8 seeds aren't so far apart as they were back in the day. When it was us and the Sharks, there was a clear disparity. I mean, for God's sake, Mike Ricci was on that team. Ugh. And if you remember Mike Ricci, ugly as sin.
Yeah.
So the Kings beating the Red Wings was a huge deal when it was a 1-8. Now a 1-8 isn't that big of a deal. So I think people were getting too far ahead of it, and the Sharks just essentially, no pun intended, bit us in the ass.
Well, I like to think the Blues got their revenge on the Sharks, about 20 years later in the Western Conference Finals last year. So, we can put that to bed finally. And I think we can put this episode to bed as well. That's going to do it. Enough heartache this episode, but we got a lot more coming up next week. Again, Luke Widbin has a new music video for us. We're going to drop that here as well. I know Guy's working on a special Aloha commentary. Big stuff happening next Sunday and Monday. Of course, get your T-shirts, your Blue Notes T-shirts like a guy was wearing at Teespring, our Teespring store. The link is in the description below. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Blue Notes Pod. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And I want to thank you for listening and watching, because without you, there is no me, there is no Wags, there is no Hawaii Blues fan, there is no Hockey Podcast Network, and there is no Blue Notes. All of that made possible by you. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump and always play to the whistle. Jeremy Boyer, play us out. You're listening to the Hockey Podcast Network, your home for hockey talk covering every team in the NHL. New episodes every Monday. Download at thehockeypodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from.